The conference room was absolutely silent, save for the rhythmic, metallic scratching of expensive pens against heavy parchment paper. 27 individual signatures stood between Apex Nexus Data and the most lucrative contract in the history of our company, an agreement valued at $1.3 billion. The air inside the executive suite was heavy, thick with the scent of overpriced leather portfolios, nervous perspiration, and the subtle notes of imported cologne. Every single gaze was fixed intently on the massive mahogany table where the final, bound document rested like a crown jewel. That was the exact moment Nathaniel Cross decided to clear his throat. "Before we proceed any further," he announced, his booming voice cutting cleanly through the palpable tension of the room, "I want to take a brief moment to address an operational restructuring that will take effect immediately." My stomach dropped into my shoes. Something in his tone, a subtle shift from professional triumph to predatory glee, felt entirely wrong. He turned to me, his lips curling into a wide smile that absolutely did not reach his cold, calculating eyes. "Oliver, your services are no longer required here. You have been dead weight for the past few months, and quite frankly, we need actual, visionary talent to execute contracts of this magnitude. Security will escort you out of the building now." The entire room froze in collective disbelief. I heard someone gasp softly in the corner. I felt 27 pairs of wide, stunned eyes shift rapidly from the final document to me, but I did not panic. I did not raise my voice, and I certainly did not cry. I smiled. I smiled because Nathaniel Cross had just made the single, most expensive, catastrophic mistake of his entire professional career. And the most beautiful part of it all was that he had absolutely no idea what he had just unleashed. My name is Oliver Sullivan, and until that surreal moment, I had proudly served as the Vice President of Infrastructure Operations at Apex Nexus Data for 11 long, demanding years. The title itself sounds incredibly fancy, conjuring images of corner offices and endless golf outings, but my actual background was anything but glamorous. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood where folks fixed their own vehicles on the weekends because paying a mechanic was considered an unimaginable luxury. My father worked grueling double shifts at a local manufacturing plant, his hands permanently stained with grease and hard work. My mother spent her days cleaning the houses of wealthy executives and her nights hunched over a flickering computer screen, taking online courses to finally finish her degree. They taught me two truths that shaped my worldview. First, hard work is the reliable way to solve problems. Second, understanding how people operate matters more than trying to impress them. When I started my career at Apex Nexus Data, I was not interested in climbing corporate ladders or playing political games. I wanted to build complex, robust systems that worked. I wanted to create the kind of digital infrastructure that did not just barely function under pressure, but actively anticipated cascading failures. That pragmatic philosophy made me an anomaly in the corporate world. While my peers were busy optimizing their networking profiles, attending industry mixers, and scheduling power lunches, I was down in the server rooms. I spent my days mapping out fiber optic cable and identifying every point of potential failure. My team was not the flashiest department. We did not directly generate revenue or land on the covers of business magazines. We were the silent guardians, the people who kept the lights on, the data flowing seamlessly, and the corporate promises deliverable. And because we were so effective, we became invisible to people like Nathaniel Cross. Nathaniel had joined Apex Nexus Data as our new chief executive officer exactly 18 months prior to that humiliating scene in the executive conference room. He was recruited from a fierce competitor, brought in by our eager board of directors to rapidly scale the company and unlock massive enterprise value. In standard corporate speak, that simply meant making rich people significantly richer. From his very first day in the office, his leadership style clashed violently with the quiet, diligent culture we had carefully built over a decade. We valued substance and reliability. He valued spectacle and optics. We solved massive engineering problems quietly in the background. He wanted grand announcements, flashy press releases, and standing ovations. Within his first 120 days at the helm, he had systematically replaced 5 key department heads with loyalists from his previous company. All of these new executives possessed incredibly impressive resumes filled with buzzwords, but they had zero functional understanding of how Apex Nexus data actually operated on a technical level. I watched helplessly as incredibly talented engineers, people who had built our network architecture from the ground up, were quietly pushed out because they were supposedly not aligned with the new strategic vision. The new leadership team spoke entirely in trendy corporate jargon and held endless meetings to plan future meetings. However, they largely left my department alone. I assumed it was because infrastructure was not glamorous or visible enough to matter to their grand ambitions. That assumption was their first massive mistake. Their second, far more fatal mistake was failing to actually read and understand the foundational contracts they inherited when they took over the company. 4 years before Nathaniel ever set foot in our building, Apex Nexus Data had faced an existential crisis. We had miraculously landed our very first major government contract, a massive data management system for highly sensitive federal agencies. The technical requirements were absolutely staggering. They demanded a 99.999% uptime guarantee, military-grade encryption security, and complete domestic data sovereignty. Attempting to build that level of infrastructure through our traditional corporate procurement channels would have taken 22 months and cost at least $9 million, capital that we simply did not possess at the time. Our chief executive officer at the time, Edward Vance, was deeply desperate. The government contract contained brutal penalty clauses that would literally bankrupt the entire company if we failed to deliver the system on time. I approached Edward with a highly unconventional, perhaps even reckless, proposal. I offered to personally finance, design, and build the required server infrastructure through my own independent limited liability company. Apex Nexus Data would then lease the computing capacity from my company at exact cost. There would be absolutely no profit margin for me. They would only cover the pure operational expenses. In exchange, I would retain full legal ownership of the physical hardware, the proprietary network architecture, and the data center leases. Edward was initially very hesitant. It was a highly unusual arrangement in our industry, but the only alternative was losing the contract and watching the company fold. We brought in a team of specialized corporate attorneys to draft the agreement. The resulting contract was a masterpiece of legal protection. It was firmly rooted in Article 2A of the Uniform Commercial Code, which strictly governs commercial equipment leases, and it heavily leveraged Title 17 of the United States Code to secure my copyright over the proprietary network architecture I had designed. Apex Nexus Data gained exclusive access to a world-class infrastructure that met every single government specification. I gained absolute ownership control and a lease agreement that could only be terminated under very specific, narrow conditions, none of which included a clause for when a new executive decided he did not like my face. I drained my entire life savings and took out massive personal loans to fund the project. I personally purchased the heavy-duty servers. I ruthlessly negotiated long-term leases with secure data center facilities. I spent weeks personally configuring the complex security protocols and redundant backup systems. I worked exhausting 80-hour weeks for months on end, rarely seeing the sun. But the effort paid off. The entire system launched 3 weeks ahead of the impossible deadline. The government contract was not just a modest success, it was a flawless triumph. We experienced zero downtime over 4 years, suffered zero security breaches, and received zero operational complaints. That specific, privately owned infrastructure quickly became the rock-solid foundation for absolutely everything Apex Nexus Data built afterward. Every single major corporate client we acquired ran their operations on nested systems deeply connected to that original proprietary framework. When the company scaled its operations, it scaled directly on the infrastructure that I legally owned. But there is a dangerous caveat to being exceptionally good at your job in a quiet, unassuming way. People eventually forget that you even exist. The aggressive sales team gladly took full credit for our unprecedented client satisfaction rates. The visionary executives took full credit for the strategic technological advantage. My infrastructure department kept everything running so smoothly and perfectly that the rest of the company simply assumed the network essentially managed itself. By the time Nathaniel arrived to take over the company, almost everyone in upper management had completely forgotten that the physical servers powering 75% of our daily operations were not actually owned by Apex Nexus Data. The extensive documentation existed. The UCC filings were public record. The detailed lease contracts were securely filed in the legal department's archives. Any moderately competent executive performing standard, basic due diligence, would have discovered them immediately. But Nathaniel was not the slightest bit interested in tedious due diligence. He was exclusively interested in making aggressive, highly visible moves that made him look like a decisive leader. The $1.3 billion contract was with Caldwell Global Enterprises, a massive manufacturing conglomerate looking to completely overhaul and expand their digital infrastructure. They desperately needed a reliable technological partner who could flawlessly handle massive, secure data operations across 18 different countries. Nathaniel viewed this deal as his ultimate legacy project, the gleaming crown jewel that would permanently define his successful tenure and eventually launch him toward an even more lucrative executive position at a Fortune 500 company. The entire organization spent 7 grueling months preparing the pitch for Caldwell Global. My infrastructure team worked absolutely back-breaking hours ensuring that our core network could actually handle Caldwell's massive data requirements. I personally spent weeks designing the complex scalability models and testing the load balancers. During the final presentations, we successfully demonstrated a raw computing capacity and security framework that our biggest competitors simply could not match. When Caldwell Global officially chose us as their vendor, Nathaniel immediately took a massive, highly public victory lap. He ordered endless press releases, hosted lavish all-hands company meetings, and started acting as if the billion-dollar check had already cleared the bank. But a distinct shift in the corporate atmosphere occurred in the final crucial weeks, just before the official signing ceremony. Nathaniel's newly appointed chief operating officer, a slick, fast-talking man named Julian Barnes, who had faithfully followed Nathaniel from his previous employer, started poking around my department. Julian began asking incredibly pointed, uninformed questions about our operational efficiency, questioning what he called redundant personnel costs. I quickly heard through reliable back channels that Julian had managed to convince Nathaniel that my infrastructure department was massively overstaffed and grossly overpaid. Julian argued that we were an expensive relic of the company's unfocused past and that our budget could be slashed to boost the quarterly profit margins. On the morning of the monumental signing, I arrived at our corporate headquarters at 5:30 in the morning. The formal ceremony was not scheduled until 3 in the afternoon, but I wanted to personally run the final series of diagnostic tests. Caldwell Global's technical team would be actively monitoring our system performance as part of their final due diligence process during the signing. Everything needed to be absolutely perfect, and my team had delivered absolute perfection. By noon, I had conclusively confirmed that every single server cluster was operating at peak optimal levels. Our data transfer rates were significantly exceeding the contractual specifications. The advanced security protocols were fully active, updated, and impenetrable. We were completely ready to flawlessly support the largest financial contract in the history of our company. I went to my office and changed into the sharp, tailored suit I had brought specifically for the ceremony. The signing was scheduled to take place in the Grand Executive Conference Room, a massive space featuring floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the sprawling city skyline. It was the room they reserved exclusively for high-profile board meetings and glossy photographic opportunities. I was not naive about my standing in the company. I fully knew that Nathaniel did not respect my quiet, methodical approach to work, but I had delivered absolutely everything he had demanded. This massive contract was only happening because my proprietary infrastructure made it technically possible. I foolishly thought that delivering undeniable, world-class professional results equated to permanent job security. That just shows how much I still had to learn about men like Nathaniel Cross. The conference room quickly filled with our senior executives, corporate lawyers, and the entire leadership team from Caldwell Global. Their chief executive officer, Eleanor Caldwell, was a sharp, intimidating woman in her late 50s who possessed a legendary reputation for thorough preparation and absolutely zero tolerance for incompetence. The mood in the room was celebratory but highly formal. Nervous assistants hastily arranged thick stacks of documents, while lawyers whispered their final, frantic confirmations to one another. Someone had arranged for expensive catering, laying out tiny artisan sandwiches and imported sparkling water in elegant glass bottles. I stood quietly near the back of the room. I was not hiding. That was simply where the technical staff usually stood during these grand executive ceremonies. Close enough to answer any sudden technical questions, but far enough away to stay entirely out of the promotional photographs. Nathaniel worked the room like a seasoned politician running for office, aggressively shaking hands, slapping backs, and laughing entirely too loudly at jokes that were not particularly funny. Julian stood right beside him, nodding enthusiastically and playing the role of the perfect supportive second-in-command. Finally, the documents were ready. Eleanor Caldwell took her seat at the head of the table. Nathaniel sat directly across from her, adjusting his expensive tie. The lawyers carefully positioned the final papers between them, and that was the exact moment Nathaniel decided to make his grand fatal move. Before we proceed, he announced, standing back up to command the room, I want to take a brief moment to address an operational restructuring that will take effect immediately. The shift in the room's atmosphere was instantaneous and heavy. Eleanor Caldwell's expression immediately went completely neutral, her eyes narrowing slightly. Her team of lawyers slowly looked up from their documents. Nathaniel turned directly to me. Oliver, your services are no longer required here. You have been dead weight for the past few months. And quite frankly, we need actual, visionary talent to execute contracts of this magnitude. Security will escort you out of the building now. The words hit me like a physical blow to the chest. Someone near me inhaled very sharply. I saw Eleanor Caldwell watching the scene with intense scrutiny, but Nathaniel was just smiling, looking incredibly proud of his ruthless display of executive power. Two burly security guards suddenly appeared at the conference room door. They looked deeply uncomfortable. One of them, Simon, was a man who had worked closely with me on upgrading the building's access protocols just last month. He absolutely refused to meet my eyes. Every single professional instinct I possessed screamed at me to fight back, to loudly defend my record, to explain to everyone in that room how catastrophically stupid and legally perilous this decision was. But I did not say a word in my defense. I simply smiled. It was not a bitter smirk or an angry grimace, but a genuine, peaceful smile. Because in that precise moment, I realized something truly beautiful. Nathaniel had absolutely no idea what he had just done. I turned calmly and walked toward the heavy oak doors. The two security guards fell into step right beside me, not touching me, just remaining present and professional. As I walked past Eleanor Caldwell, she caught my eye for a brief second. There was a clear, sharp question in her expression, but she remained completely silent. At the doorway, I stopped and turned back to face the room. Nathaniel, I said, keeping my voice perfectly calm and steady, you really should check the infrastructure contracts. Specifically, the master lease agreements governed by the Uniform Commercial Code regarding the primary server network. He waved his hand dismissively, rolling his eyes. Your replacement will handle any minor transition issues. There is no replacement, I replied simply, and there will not be a transition. Julian stepped forward, puffing out his chest. Is that a threat, Oliver? Because it is not a threat, I said. It is a legal fact. You will understand perfectly in about 48 hours. Then I turned and left. Behind me, I could hear confused, worried murmuring erupting around the table, but Nathaniel's loud voice quickly cut through the noise. He is just bitter, Nathaniel declared confidently. Let us proceed with the signing. I walked down the long corridor and past my department, where my entire team was watching the spectacle through the glass walls, their faces completely stricken with shock. I gave them a small, reassuring nod. They already knew the plan. I had quietly briefed my senior engineers early that morning, just in case Julian's recent meddling escalated into something drastic. They had already meticulously backed up all their personal files and crucial diagnostic tools. The master lease agreement I had signed with Apex Nexus Data 4 years earlier was incredibly specific and legally ironclad. It explicitly guaranteed the company exclusive, uninterrupted access to my proprietary infrastructure as long as I remained actively employed in a senior decision-making technical role, or if my eventual departure was entirely voluntary and followed a standard 120 days transition period. However, termination without justifiable cause, especially a hostile, public termination, automatically triggered a completely different protective clause. Under the terms we had negotiated, I possessed the absolute right to completely revoke their access to the network with a mere 48 hours of formal notice. The physical servers did not belong to Apex Nexus Data. The data center leases did not belong to Apex Nexus Data. The advanced security protocols, the complex redundancy systems, the automated backup frameworks, all of it was mine. It was mine legally, contractually, and completely protected under federal copyright law. When I finally reached my car in the parking garage, I immediately called my attorney, a brilliant woman named Sarah Jenkins, who specialized exclusively in complex corporate contract law. She was the one who had helped me draft the original, impenetrable agreement. "What exactly did they do?" she asked. Her voice caught somewhere between absolute shock and sheer professional delight. "He fired me right in the middle of the Caldwell signing in front of everyone," I explained. "Sarah, you know exactly what this means." "I certainly do," she replied, typing rapidly on her keyboard. "I need you to officially file the revocation notice right now. The 48-hour countdown starts the second I hit send. They are going to completely panic." "Yes," I said, starting my engine. "They absolutely are." I drove home and walked into my quiet apartment. I brewed a strong cup of coffee and sat by the large window, watching the busy city below. My phone began buzzing relentlessly around 6:30 in the evening. There were dozens of calls from panicked coworkers, frantic texts asking what had happened, and worried messages from people who had only heard wild rumors. I did not answer a single one of them. There was absolutely nothing to say yet. The real, unmitigated chaos would begin tomorrow, when Nathaniel and Julian actually attempted to understand the complex digital systems they thought they had just inherited, only to realize those systems were legally untouchable. Around 8:30 that night, I received a secure text message from one of my most trusted senior engineers, a brilliant man named Daniel, who had been with the company for 7 years. "They are demanding that we explain the infrastructure documentation to them," Daniel wrote. "They cannot find a single document that proves Apex Nexus Data actually owns the primary servers. Julian is completely freaking out and screaming at the legal department." I smiled and replied, "They will not find it because it does not exist. Please call me immediately if they order you to do anything illegal or unethical." "Are you okay?" "I am fine," Daniel texted back. "Better than fine. We are just watching the ship sink, and I was fine too." For the first time in many agonizing months, my mind felt completely clear. The exhausting political games, the constant undervaluation of my work, the slow daily erosion of professional respect, it was all finally over. Not because I had quietly quit in defeat, but because someone had pushed hard enough to activate severe legal consequences they simply could not comprehend. The next morning, I woke up to 21 missed calls. Most were from various executive numbers I did not recognize. One was from Nathaniel's personal assistant. I ignored all of them and went for a run. When I returned, there was a frantic email waiting from Julian Barnes. The subject line read, "Urgent infrastructure documentation request, flagged with high importance." The body of the email was panicked corporate speak that essentially boiled down to a desperate plea. "We need you to immediately explain where the physical servers are located and how to access the legal ownership records." I calmly replied with a single sentence. "Please direct all future inquiries regarding this matter to my retained legal counsel, Sarah Jenkins." I included her contact information, then forwarded the thread to Sarah. She called me laughing 10 minutes later. "Oliver, they have absolutely no idea what they have stepped into. They actually believe this is just a simple clerical documentation problem." How long until they realize the truth? My guess is by the end of business today, I replied. Eventually, a junior lawyer will read the actual UCC filings, and then all hell is going to break loose. What should I expect next? Expect angry threats, lowball settlement offers, and sheer desperation, Sarah advised. Hold your ground firmly. You possess absolutely all of the leverage in this situation. Sarah was entirely correct. At 5:15 that evening, I received a call from an unlisted number. Against my better judgment, I answered it. It was Edward Vance, the former CEO who had originally approved my unconventional infrastructure deal. Oliver, he said, his voice sounding incredibly tired and worn. They called me. The board of directors called me. They are desperately trying to understand what happened, and I assume you told them the absolute truth. I asked. That I built and legally own the entire infrastructure, that the master lease agreement was completely legitimate and formally approved by the board at the time, and that anyone doing proper due diligence would have known this immediately? Did they listen to reason? I pressed. They panicked, Edward admitted. Nathaniel is loudly claiming he was never informed about the arrangement. The board is claiming they mistakenly assumed the ownership had transferred to the company at some point. Everyone is busy pointing fingers and trying to save their own careers. What do you need from me, Oliver? He sighed heavily. Nothing. I am not calling to ask for any favors. I am calling to tell you that I am genuinely sorry. You deserved far better than what Nathaniel did to you. You built something truly remarkable for us, and you did it with absolute integrity. Whatever you decide to do next, you have fully earned the right to make that choice. It was the very first genuine apology I had received throughout this entire ordeal. It mattered to me. Thank you, Edward, I said sincerely. For what it is worth, Edward continued. Eleanor Caldwell officially pulled her company out of the contract this afternoon. My heart skipped a beat. She did? Yes, Edward confirmed. She told the board that if Apex Nexus Data treats essential technical personnel with such blatant disrespect in public, she cannot possibly trust their operational stability. The way Nathaniel fired you right in the middle of the signing ceremony deeply spooked Eleanor. Then, when the desperate questions about the infrastructure started circulating through the industry back channels, she completely walked away. The billion-dollar deal is gone, not because of you, Oliver, but entirely because of Nathaniel's massive ego and incompetence. How is Nathaniel handling the fallout? I asked. Edward laughed, a bitter, dry sound. Not well at all. The board has called an emergency session. Julian is desperately trying to blame your entire department for supposedly maintaining poor documentation. Nathaniel is wildly claiming that you deliberately sabotaged the company. I did not sabotage anything, I said firmly. I built flawless systems that worked perfectly, and I legally own them under federal law. I know the board realizes that now, but simply knowing it does not solve their immediate crisis. We talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. The 48-hour notice period continued to tick down relentlessly. I spent the time carefully planning my next moves and fielding increasingly frantic communications through Sarah. Nathaniel sent a formal legal demand letter claiming my lease agreement was entirely invalid due to a supposed conflict of interest. A weak legal argument that Sarah dismantled immediately since the board had explicitly approved the original arrangement. Julian tried a completely different, softer approach, sending a proposal to buy out my infrastructure at what he termed a fair market value. The number he offered was barely 35% of what it would actually cost them to rebuild the network from scratch. Finally, the board of directors sent their own high-powered legal team, attorneys who actually understood the gravity of the situation. They formally requested an in-person meeting to discuss all available options. I agreed to meet on day 3, right after the revocation period had ended and their access to my proprietary infrastructure had been officially and legally terminated. That night, at exactly 12 o'clock, the master lease officially expired. At 12:05, my servers automatically began refusing all Apex Nexus data access requests. I was not maliciously destroying anything. I was not deleting any client data. I was simply enforcing the strict terms of our contract under the Uniform Commercial Code. No active employment in a technical decision-making role meant the lease agreement was void. which meant absolutely no access to the hardware. Their entire system did not crash immediately, as they had some limited local capacity, but roughly 75% of their daily operations simply ground to a halt. The high-stakes meeting took place at a strictly neutral location, a luxurious conference room inside Sarah's prestigious law firm. Apex Nexus Data sent 3 senior board members, their general counsel, and, surprisingly, Nathaniel himself. He looked pale, exhausted, and as though he had not slept in days. The board members were serious, seasoned professionals. Martin Frost, Diane Palmer, and Richard Owens. They fully understood they were facing a catastrophic operational crisis. "Mr. Sullivan," Martin began, "we greatly appreciate you taking this meeting. We would very much like to find a resolution that works for everyone involved." "I am listening," I replied calmly. Diane leaned forward. "First, we want to formally acknowledge that your termination was handled incredibly inappropriately. Nathaniel has finally admitted that he did not properly review the core infrastructure contracts before making his rash decision." I glanced briefly at Nathaniel. He was staring intensely at the polished table, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked painful. "The board is fully prepared to offer immediate reinstatement at your previous position, accompanied by a formal public apology and significant financial compensation for the severe disruption," Diane concluded. Sarah and I had fully anticipated this exact opening move. "And what about the infrastructure access?" I asked quietly. "We would like to seamlessly reinstate the master lease under the exact same original terms," Richard said. "No," I replied simply. The entire room went completely quiet. "No?" Martin repeated, looking confused. "The original lease was structured that way, solely because the company desperately needed help and had severely limited resources at the time," I explained. "That is no longer the situation. If we are renegotiating this arrangement, we are doing it properly and fairly." Diane nodded slowly, understanding my position. "What are your terms, Mr. Sullivan?" I slid a thick, professionally bound folder across the table. Sarah and I had spent 3 exhausting days preparing this document. Option 1. Apex Nexus Data purchases the entire infrastructure outright at an independently appraised fair market value. I will personally transition everything over a 120-day period, and then I walk away completely. "And option 2? Richard asked, looking nervous. "I return to the company as the Chief Technology Officer, not merely a Vice President," I stated firmly. "I require full executive authority over all technical operations, complete with an equity package standard for C-suite positions. The infrastructure lease continues, but it will now be billed at current market rates, not at pure cost. And I maintain absolute legal ownership of the hardware." Nathaniel finally exploded, slamming his hand on the table. "That is absolute insanity. You are extorting this company." Sarah's voice was pure ice. "Mr. Cross, extortion implies illegal coercion. My client legally owns the infrastructure that your entire company currently depends on for survival. He is under absolutely no legal obligation to provide you with access at any price point. These are incredibly generous offers, considering your current, desperate position." Martin held up a hand, silencing the room. "Nathaniel, you are only here as a courtesy. Keep your mouth shut." The public rebuke was incredibly sharp. Nathaniel's face flushed deep red, but he remained silent. Diane studied the documents carefully. "These terms are highly aggressive, Oliver." "They are entirely fair," I countered calmly. "Option 1 gives you complete, unencumbered ownership and entirely eliminates any future dependency on me. Option 2 gives you immediate access to complex infrastructure you cannot possibly replicate quickly, while ensuring I am properly valued for my work. If you refuse both options, I will simply sell my infrastructure services to a competitor, and you can try to rebuild your network from scratch. Based on my conservative estimates, that process will take you 24 months and cost between $16 and $20 million. Richard was rapidly running the complex numbers on his laptop. He is absolutely right. Rebuilding comparable infrastructure will take years. We have already lost Caldwell, and 3 other major clients have called this morning, asking serious questions about our operational stability. If word spreads that we do not actually own our core network, we will lose everything." The board members exchanged heavy, knowing looks. Finally, Diane spoke. "We need to discuss this privately. Can we reconvene tomorrow? Take all the time you need, I said, standing up. But please remember, every single day without access is another day your clients are asking very difficult questions. That evening, Martin called me directly. The board had voted unanimously. They accepted option 2. Furthermore, they were officially moving to forcefully remove Nathaniel as CEO, effective immediately. Julian Barnes would also be departing the company. 4 days later, the official announcement went out. I was named the new Chief Technology Officer. Nathaniel and Julian were gone, and shortly after, Eleanor Caldwell reached out directly to me. We successfully renegotiated the contract, landing a revised deal worth $950 million. 6 years have passed since that fateful day in the conference room. Apex Nexus Data is now incredibly stable and growing rapidly. My independent infrastructure company now employs 20 brilliant people and supports massive corporate clients across 3 different continents. The vital lesson I learned was not about seeking petty revenge. It was about something much more profound. You must intimately understand what your expertise is truly worth. You must document it properly under the law. Invisible work will always stay invisible until you force people to acknowledge it through ironclad contracts, absolute ownership, and the quiet courage to stand firm when arrogant people try to dismiss you as dead weight.